All right, in this video, we are looking at the new Reset insert by Pelican. This is their new insert that gives you endless configurations and adaptability for the ultimate protection. This one that we're going to be opening up today is for the Pelican 1750 long case. So let's go ahead and open this thing up and show you what comes inside. So we got instruction card here. We have bags of foam pegs, long pegs, got short pegs, and we have plastic holsters. Then we have another grid that does not have pegs in it with a large cutout, which we'll talk about later. We got one grid, two grids, three grids. All right, so here it is all laid out. That comes in the box. As you can see, again, we have a grid without pegs. We got bags of foam pegs and some plastic holsters. Then we have three grids that are fully populated with pegs. You want to grab your long pegs and these plastic holsters like this. You got your plastic holster, long peg. You're going to put it together like that. Make sure it's nice and flat and flush. And this is what creates the standoffs. And so what you want to do is take all your long pegs and those plastic holsters and put it together like this. Then once we do that, then we can start filling in the empty holes that are in these grids. All right, so why don't we go ahead and do that real quick in 3, 2, 1. All right, there we go. Got them all done. Now we can start to put them into the grids. Starting on the back side here at the hard plastic down, just put in like that. And we're going to do that on every one of the open holes here. So there you go. There is one grid ready to go. Set that off to the side. We'll keep doing it for each one. There's another one. All right, and there's the last one. And as you're doing those, it's a good time just to make sure that each one of all the pegs here on the grids are evenly placed. So there should be about an 1/8 inch of spacing on the bottom, and it's just make sure that the top is going to be nice and flat and even. All right, so that one is all done, and we set that off to the side. Now we are just about ready to drop it into the case. You also see here that we have some extra ones sitting around, so you could always just keep these off to the side. You can use them for extra support if it's needed, but it's nice to have extras lying around just in case. All right, so here it is all laid out, so you can see it before we drop it into the case. Again, we got three grids here, fully populated with the pegs and the standoffs, creating the elevation that we need. Again, we got the end panel here. This is going to be for the wheel well side because of the cutouts and the squared off on the center. The center grid here is squared on both sides. And then we have the other end panel, which we have rounded on one side and squared towards the middle. Also, this is a good way to show how it works. So again, we have the grids that are elevated because of the standoffs that we installed, and that's what gives us the elevation of the grid so that the pegs can actually move down. So as you can see, all we got to do is press down, and this is how we would create the shape and the form that we want to protect whatever we're putting in here, like a firearm. So as you can see, it's easy to just push down, create the formation however you want. This creates the padding and the protection on the bottom of the firearm or whatever object you put it in here. It creates the perimeter up top to create the protection around all the edges. And then when the case is closed, you have the foam on top, creating the protection on top. So it's just as easy as pushing down and forming as you need. And then if you need to make adjustments, just take out the grid, flip it over, and push them back. And you're good to go. Also a good time to mention what these are made out of and some of the testing and stuff that Pelican did with the grids. The grid is injection molded plastic. The pegs are EVA high density foam. The holsters that create the standoffs with the long pegs is injection molded plastic. So few materials needed, but it gives you the ultimate protection and less moving parts, which makes it last a long time. Also, the testing that they did drop test, vibration test, heat tests, cold tests, and it passed without any issues. They put in blue guns and weighted boxes to represent an actual loadout that you would have in a case, and then dropped it from 3 feet, 4 feet, 5 feet on all different edges and stuff like that. Make sure that the pegs don't fall or move out of any direction, and that everything is protected inside, and it did that without any issues at all. I also have used this myself. I've traveled with my rifle in a 1750 case with a reset insert, traveled to and from a couple different states, and the rifle did fine. The optics held 0 and everything was protected. So nice and easy, and confident that it will protect your gear as intended. So why don't we go ahead and get ready to drop this thing into a case. All right, so here we go. We have the 1750 long case. We're gonna go ahead and drop in the insert now. Again, we have the panel with the wheel well side cutouts. We'll drop in first. We have the center cutout, again, squared on all sides there, and then the other end panel rounded on one side, squared on the other at the top. Nice and snug. So there you can see how it looks, all inserted and ready to configure for your firearm or whatever it is that you're going to put in here. All right, so let's grab a rifle and drop it in here, and we'll show you how to configure it quickly. All right, so here we go. We have a rifle. We'll go ahead and place it on top of the pegs, and in the case of where you're going to want it, something like that. And then what you got to do is just start to press down the pegs just about 1/4 of an inch, so you can start to outline and see where you're going to create the entire imprint. You can't just take your item, like your firearm like this, and just press down and have the pegs go down. The pegs, there's too much resistance there, which is done on purpose to keep the pegs from going up and down and keeping the protection there. So you can't just drop in these things and push down. You got to go and individually push down the pegs and then configure it that way. So again, you got to just push down about 1/4 of an inch, kind of just creating a little bit of a imprint of where everything's going to lay. All right, so now that we have the small indentation of the pegs with the rifle, all you got to do now is continue to push them all the way down until they hit the bottom of the case. Do that all the way through from the outside in, creating that full impression of the firearm. All right, so there it is, all configured and set for this particular firearm. As you can see, we got a nice impression here, nice and detailed and outlined. It's just like a pick and pluck or a custom foam type solution. The small pegs give you that fidelity to configure around each and every little corner and angle of the firearm or whatever else that you're going to put in here. So as you can see, it's nice and tight. Drop it in there. So now it's ready to go. All right, this is also a good time just to talk about that other grid that comes in the kit. This is the one that does not have pegs in it and has an open cutout. This is going to be used in case you have a rifle with a larger optic. So if your optic has larger turrets, you have maybe the windage is a lot larger, and then you have maybe a side focus and illuminated reticle, and it sits maybe 4.5 inches. You can use this one instead of the one that's pre-populated. So you just take out the pegs out of that one, populate this one with the pegs, and then you can use this insert for the center. So you can drop this thing in here in a couple different configurations depending on how you want your rifle sitting in here, and then your optic would sit here and allow the rifle to sit nice and flush across the rest of the grids. So here's a good example. We have the grid and we have an optic a little bit larger, and so if it were to sit like that on the firearm, we have a little bit more space underneath that allows the firearm again to sit nice and flush across the rest of the grids. The optic sits right there. It's still protected with the pegs around the other areas, and then this gives you a nice flush and even protection across all the stuff, and then it makes it easier for the case lid to drop and close. So that's what this extra grid is for, which is a nice option to have just in case you have different rifles with different optics. All right, so that's it. That is the new reset insert by Pelican. We'll put more specs and some of the other features and stuff in the description below. If you have any questions or comments, please reach out. And as always, thanks for watching.